Handheld Mario Kart games are universally loved by millions. Games like Mario Kart DS, Mario Kart 7, and technically even Mario Kart Tour have shown that handheld Mario Karts can be just as good, and in some cases, even better than their home console counterparts. But there's one handheld Mario Kart game that has always stood out to me. One handheld Mario Kart game that, despite bringing the series to portable consoles in the first place, often gets overlooked. That game is none other than Mario Kart Super Circuit. This game is weird, hence the title of this video. But regardless of that, for my third video in my series covering all the Mario Kart games, I want to truly give this entry an honest chance and see if the first handheld Mario Kart game still holds up today. My name is Mariomikester, and welcome to a Mario Kart Super Circuit retrospective. Released on August 27, 2001 here in North America, Mario Kart Super Circuit is the third entry in the Mario Kart series, and the first to be released on a portable console. Not much is really known about Super Circuit's development other than the fact that it was outsourced to Intelligent Systems, a studio well known for their work on the WarioWare and Paper Mario games. To this day, Mario Kart Super Circuit is the only Mario Kart game that Nintendo has entirely outsourced the development for. And considering the fact that Intelligent Systems had never worked on a racing game prior to developing Super Circuit, it's honestly really impressive they were even able to make a Mario Kart game in the first place. An early logo for the game that was featured on Nintendo's website a few months before the game's release in 2001 reveals that the game's initial title was supposed to be Mario Kart Advance, which, despite being the final title for the Japanese release of the game, was for some reason changed to Super Circuit in the North American and European releases of the game. But a last-minute title change wasn't the weirdest change that happened during Super Circuit's development. Some beta footage of the game from Space World 2000 shows us that the character models were much different than what we see in the final release of the game, sporting a more bobblehead-esque look. Upon opening the game, you're greeted by this incredibly cute pixel artwork featuring the whole roster of characters, and have the option between single player, multiplayer, and ghost exchange. Obviously, since Mario Kart at its core is meant to be experienced with other people, what better mode to start off with than multiplayer? Okay, heading into the single player mode, you have the choice between Grand Prix, Time Trials, and Quick Run. And while the Grand Prix and Time Trial modes may seem familiar, Quick Run might not. Quick Run is essentially the equivalent to the single-player versus mode you see in modern Mario Kart games. Here you get to choose exactly what course you want to race on rather than having to play through an entire Grand Prix Cup. You get to choose how many laps there'll be, and even if coins or items will be on. This mode is perfect for people who just want to get a quick race in, hence the name of Quick Run, but also for those who like to spice things up a little bit and raise the lap counter, test their skills, and try to win without using any items. Heading into the character selection, the roster here is the exact same as Mario Kart 64, even sharing the same weight classes and stats as they did in that game, with only minor changes like lightweight characters now having a lower top speed stat, and heavyweight characters now having a higher top speed stat. It's weird. But despite having the exact same roster as 64, this game does not control like it at all. Whereas I felt 64 and Super Mario Kart's controls were relatively easy to pick up, with 64 being the more approachable of the two due to the N64's control stick, Super Circuit's controls were surprisingly very annoying to try and get the hang of. Instead of having the controls down within a lap or two of my first race, I ended up taking almost 4 whole races before I was even able to kind of understand how it all worked. And even then, I was still slipping and sliding around the track the whole race, to the point where I literally had to switch to a lighter weight character in order to have any sort of traction on the ground. The slipperiness of Super Circuit's controls is especially evident on tracks with ice physics like Snowland, where it's almost impossible to play as heavyweight characters like Bowser and Donkey Kong due to how slippery everything is. Hell, even the time trial world record for Snowland stays on the off-road for a majority of the track because they have more traction there. Super Circuit's controls aren't all bad though. Once you're able to adjust to its slipperiness, there is some fun to be had with trying to master certain tracks and take advantage of their flaws. Overall though, while the controls do have some charm to them, it's really difficult to appreciate that charm when there are much better controlling Mario Karts out there that are much easier to pick up. One thing that is easy to appreciate about Super Circuit though, is its track selection. The tracks here, while obviously a step down from 64 graphically, are some of the most creative in the entire series. Tracks like Riverside Park, Cheeseland, Sky Garden, and Ribbon Road are not only a blast to race on, but are also incredibly aesthetically pleasing. I absolutely adore the backgrounds each stage has. They're also full of charm and take perfect advantage of the GBA's colorful 16-bit art style. Without a doubt though, one of the coolest ways Super Circuit takes advantage of its graphical limitations is with its course previews. Rather than including screenshots or a short video preview of the tracks within a cup like pretty much every other Mario Kart game does, Super Circuit instead has unique artwork for every single course in the game. For Shy Guy Beach, you got a picture of Yoshi with some sunglasses on, chilling under an umbrella, enjoying a drink. Luigi Circuit's got a picture of Peach and Toad hanging out with these snails. Cheep Cheep Island has some artwork of DK rethinking all of his life choices. Snowlands has a picture of Mario covered in a pile of snow. They're all so creative. These artworks just bring the tracks to life, and I would love to see this kind of course preview return in a future Mario Kart game. Back to the tracks themselves though, out of every single one in this game, there were two that really stuck out to me. Sunset Wilds and Rainbow Road. Starting off with Sunset Wilds, this track takes place in a desert at, sunset, and sees the player navigating tight turns and avoiding crashing into Shy Guy tents that cause Shy Guy to latch onto your cart and slow you down. The coolest part of this track though, isn't even the track itself, it's the background, with each lap you complete causing the sun to set further and further, resulting in the background changing twice throughout the race. These background changes, while subtle, completely change the tone of the track, and, in a way, make every lap unique. I really like this. It's such a creative thing that they absolutely did not have to do, but something that just makes this track 10 times better. The aesthetic here is beautiful. Moving on to Rainbow Road, this has to be one of the most unique Rainbow Roads in the entire Mario Kart series. While layout and design-wise it doesn't seem particularly special, lining the edges of the entire track are what seem to be walls, but are actually ramps that you can jump off of. And depending on how much speed you have when going off of one of these ramps, you can potentially skip huge parts of the track. I absolutely love this. This is without a doubt the coolest gimmick of any Rainbow Road. The ramps here allow for an almost infinite amount of shortcuts for the player to make, big or small, and makes this easily the most replayable track in the entire game. I can't even begin to explain just how satisfying it feels to chain together shortcuts here, and try to go for your best time in time trials. The world record for this course really puts into perspective just how much of this track you can skip, and just how broken it truly is. It's incredible. If they could somehow bring this track back in a future Mario Kart game, maybe even the Booster Course Pass, and retain its insanity, I think it could become a new fan favorite. But Super Circuit's track selection doesn't just stop at entirely new tracks. If you're willing to put in the effort, you can unlock remakes of every single track from Super Mario Kart, which is just so cool. The way you go about unlocking these tracks though is anything but cool. You see, in order to unlock the 5 cups that contain all the SNES tracks, you have to painstakingly go through all of the 5 already unlocked cups in the game, and collect 100 coins overall on each one. But wait, it gets even worse. For the 100 coins you collect to even count towards unlocking the SNES cups, you have to have already gotten a gold trophy in each of the cups you're collecting 100 coins in. It's weird, confusing, and literally makes no sense. Annoying unlock requirements aside though, having every single SNES track remade here is so cool. Each and every track here looks and sounds so much better than they did on the SNES, despite the fact that both games run on a very similar engine. The colors in these tracks just look way more vibrant here, and make the tracks stand out a lot more than they did on the SNES. I love it. The fact that they basically hit an entire remake to Super Mario Kart here is something I will always appreciate about Super Circuit. This is something you would never see from Nintendo nowadays. Speaking of Super Mario Kart though, I find it really weird just how much Super Circuit builds upon that game, rather than building upon 64. I mean, as the third entry in the series, you'd think this game would attempt at being a sequel to, or at least build upon the foundation of Mario Kart 64, but it actually adopts way more elements from Super Mario Kart. Of course, yeah, there are similarities to 64, like with it having the exact same roster as that game, similar character models, and almost the exact same item pool. But in terms of how the game actually plays out, Super Circuit feels like a direct sequel to Super Mario Kart more than anything. I mean, for one, you have the 2D flatness of everything, that, while obviously a byproduct of the GBA's graphical limitations, is still a much more refined version of the 2D gameplay of Super Mario Kart. Along with this, Super Circuit also brings back coins, a major aspect that was missing from 64. The only unfortunate part of Super Circuit's connection to Super Mario Kart is that, in its attempt to try and recapture and refine the gameplay of that game, while also mixing in some ideas from 64, it ultimately fails to really introduce anything new to the series, making it the least inventive Mario Kart game. I mean, even introducing something as little as a new item or character could have helped this game stand out a little bit. The lack of anything new here really makes this game one of, if not the most forgettable entry in the series. Forgettability aside, one aspect of this game I will never forget is the multiplayer. By connecting up with other Game Boy Advances using the Game Boy link cable, up to 4 people could race against each other in the Grand Prix and Versus modes, or battle against each other in the Battle mode. One of the coolest parts of Mario Kart Super Circuit's multiplayer though, was that you could still play with other people even if they didn't own the game themselves, which was a huge deal at the time. This single cartridge multiplayer mode was dubbed Single Pack Multiplayer. The way the GBA was able to pull off single pack multiplayer without actually downloading the game onto the receiving systems like the DS's download play feature did, since the GBA didn't have any internal storage, was to essentially project another screen onto the GBAs of the people who were connected to the first player. Which meant, in order for the game to properly work, this single pack multiplayer had to be much more dumbed down than the multi-pack multiplayer, due to the limited amount of data that could be transferred through the link cable at a time, resulting in only 4 tracks being available, those being SNES tracks, the animations being much less smooth, and only one character being playable, Yoshi, who had 4 different colors representing the 4 players. But regardless of how cool this single pack multiplayer mode was, the absolute best multiplayer experience in this game came from the multi-pack mode. The multi-pack mode allowed you to experience the entire game, not just 4 tracks. Going into this multiplayer mode, I wasn't expecting much, but surprisingly, there is a lot of fun to be had here. Starting off with the Grand Prix and Versus modes, these were really fun. I mean, they're not really anything to write home about, but it was so cool being able to race across these tracks with a friend and fight for first place. The mode I enjoyed the most here, though, was very unsurprisingly the Battle mode. I don't know why, but it's always such a surreal experience going back to an old Mario Kart game and playing its Battle mode. I guess it's just cool to see how that specific game handles it. Super Circuit's Battle mode is so much fun. I personally enjoyed it a lot more than Super Mario Kart's. The courses here, on the other hand, are fine. They are a little bland, but honestly that didn't really take away from how cool it was to play this with a friend. If you have the Nintendo Switch Online plus expansion pack subscription, I would highly recommend booting this game up and trying it with a friend. It's totally worth it. Overall, Super Circuit's multiplayer is really well done, especially the Battle mode. And the ability to be able to play with someone even if they didn't own the cartridge was an incredibly cool addition, even if it did limit a lot of what you could do. Mario Kart Super Circuit, being the first handheld Mario Kart game, obviously isn't perfect. The controls are slippery and incredibly hard to adjust to, the exact same roster from Mario Kart 64 is reused, and most notably, this game introduces almost nothing to the series outside of its tracks. Regardless of this though, there is a lot to love about this game. Super Circuit not only has one of the highest track counts in the entire series, having a whopping 40 whole tracks, with 20 of them being the entire list of tracks from Super Mario Kart Remade, it also has some of the coolest tracks in the entire series. The tracks in this game take perfect advantage of the GBA's limitations, and are not only designed well in terms of their layout, but are also just absolutely gorgeous due to how colorful and detailed their backgrounds are. Super Circuit's Rainbow Road is a Mario Kart track I will never forget because of this. There's just so much personality present in this game, And whether it be the unique artwork each track has, the amazing OST, or its distinct art style, I will never not love this game for what it is. Mario Kart Super Circuit may not be the best Mario Kart game out there. Hell, it's not even the best handheld Mario Kart game. But that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means the standards are so high. At the end of the day, while it is definitely one of the weirder Mario Kart games, Mario Kart Super Circuit has stood the test of time and is absolutely still worth playing today.